getting beyond that to like, hey, where's the real ROI on this? Like, how can I save myself? How can I improve my process as opposed to just make it more efficient, right?
Our company to kind of bring this on and for some of our bigger clients. So this can help basically provide a security layer for my models that I am deploying with these clients. And if I, for example, want to use Claude or I want to use OpenAI, you have the tools that I need to basically encrypt the data that goes from like in transit and in rest and gives me access to the same models but secure.
Correct. Yeah. And you can use all the models at the same time. So what a lot of companies do is they assign different agents based on the different models based on the use case. So you've got a very complex problem, maybe you assign, O3 to that, right? If you that, one of the biggest issues around agents is going to be, as you point out, in the security and compliance area, right? So if you have an agent, it's in healthcare, there are a lot of requirements there, right? Like, I'll give you a good example. A good example is that HIPAA in the United States governs how you deal with personal health information, right? Or protected health information. The law says all data must be encrypted in motion and at rest. Like, most AI does not do that right now. There's a graph database sitting out there with your PHI on it. Like, that doesn't work.
Hi everyone, welcome back to What About AI Agents. Today we have a wonderful guest with us, Alec Crawford, who is a founder and CEO of Leeds Artificial Intelligence Risk that specializes in AI safety, security, compliance. He won the 2024 Waters Ranking Cybersecurity Award for Gen AI Excellence, and really he is a Harvard graduate, and he brings to us a lot of insights about AI security, a topic which I deeply care about as well, since we build and release AI agents into the wild, and we have to understand the inherent security risks that using AI agents to write your code poses, as well as releasing this AI agents into the wild and working with consumer data poses. So there is a lot of different risks, and there's a lot of different opportunities for companies to improve and evolve their like security profile beyond what SOC 2 recommends. Because I think that legislation on that framework is going to be outdated very soon with how things are going. So, Alec, I'll let you introduce yourself, and we'll try to position this conversation as it goes along.
Yeah, thanks, Philippe. Yeah, so I've actually been working with AI since 1987 when I was building neural networks from scratch at Harvard. So that was pretty fun back then, but we realized pretty quickly that we needed kind of massive computing power to make them super, super useful, and got, always been involved in technology and AI in some way for the past 30 years, but over the last, obviously, 5, 6 years, it's really taken off again. And in the public eye, the release of ChatGPT obviously was a game changer. And really, the origin story of my company is a couple of years ago. I was just watching these giant companies onboard AI with no guardrails, create these AI agents or chatbots that were selling cars for $1 over the weekend and all this crazy stuff, and just saying, like, that's nuts. Like, we need governance, risk management, compliance, and cybersecurity for AI, especially in regulated businesses or critical businesses like banking and healthcare. You can just imagine, a healthcare agent gone wild giving you the wrong answers about your medication or treatment or whatever. That would just be a disaster.
Yeah, I remember last year we were rolling out some of these agents, and the customer said, "Well, do you have any AI certification?" And I'm like, "Well, we don't." So we went to our company that does our certifications. They're the same ones that has a certificate that does the certifications for OpenAI. And basically, they told us, well, listen, OpenAI doesn't have that certification either because nobody invented it yet. So this is you're going to be the first ones to get it. Like
Yeah,
it's
that's fabulous. That's so funny. Yeah, I think, and that's kind of the catch out there with AI in general, right? You've got a lot of people out there saying, "I'm an AI person," right? And some of them literally, took a 2-week class or something. Who knows, right? And security for AI is obviously brand new, right? So if you had asked someone 2 years ago, what's a Dan style attack or what's a skeleton key attack? They're like, what are you talking about? Now, prompt injections have been around for a long time because there are prompt injection attacks against SQL and other types of databases, but that's also come into play for Gen AI, and there are just a handful of companies that can detect and block those, including ours, and that's going to be important over time for Gen AI because we've certainly seen that this year. But my bet is that at some point in the next 12 months, we're going to see a successful Gen AI hack on a company that's going to turn into some kind of ransomware or some kind of huge cybersecurity incident. And it's so new that people haven't even really thought about it yet, or like, hey, how do we protect our Gen AI?
Yeah, this is something I'm thinking about on regular basis. I know Microsoft offers, like on Azure, we have this like startup hub, one of my companies, and they offer a bunch of tools to protect against prompt injection. So maybe this is kind of a good leeway for you to explain to us AIC risk and how it's different and how it can help companies kind of protect their data.
Yeah, that's fair. Look, I think there are a handful of companies trying to protect against prompt injections, which is the number one risk from OWASP for Gen AI, but a lot of them just aren't complete, right? They might do uh, prompt injections, but not skeleton key attacks or multi-hots or whatever. We're extremely comprehensive around that, and it's one of the things we focus on. Microsoft obviously is focused on 1,000 things, right?
Mm,
It's easy to say we have it, much harder to actually do it. So what we do is think of us as the operating system for AI, right? Where
mm,
you can take all the different models out there, whether it's Azure's OpenAI or Gemini or open source models like Llama, deploy them internally on-prem or on your private cloud, and then take our software, do governance, risk management, compliance, and cybersecurity for AI. Everything's inside your firewall. The models, your data, our software connects to your data, all those kinds of things, and your documents and your email, Outlook, and your Teams chats and your Zoom meetings, all that kind of stuff securely. But I do want to explain what I mean by what we call AI GRCC. So by governance, I mean who can
mm,
do what with AI at your company. You don't want everybody to be a super user of AI. That's just not good cybersecurity practices. So you might create some agents for customer service that answer questions or give them tips on talking to a client. That's very different from the one your CFO has that looks at the books and records of the firm, right? And helps you manage your company, right? Totally different AI agents. Don't give everybody the same agents. And AI agent security is becoming a thing, right? Like who gets access to that agent, right? So that's one of the things we do on the
mm,
governance side is who gets access to which agents. And not only that, maintaining each individual's permission awareness through their single sign-on, like Microsoft Entra ID. So you might have an agent, it might let you theoretically look at a database, but if you yourself don't have access to that database, it's not going to work, right? So it's kind of belt and suspenders in terms of security and governance in case
mm,
someone hacks in, takes your login and is trying to do things that they shouldn't do. By risk management, I mean things like blocking not safe for work topics, kind of like we block, certain internet sites on the internet, encrypting all data in motion and at rest. If someone types in personal information or personal health information, the option to encrypt it before it goes out to the AI, which is required in some cases
mm,
in Europe and the US. And then by compliance, I mean there are all kinds of rules, especially for banks and healthcare around what are you allowed to do with AI, what are you not. Having a full audit trail of everything everybody's done, all your model changes, and then cybersecurity is the most obvious thing where The most secure is what we do, deploying the models on-prem or in your private cloud. In fact, you could load up our software in 14 minutes, download the models, connect it to all your data, all that kind of stuff, and then literally unplug it from the internet and run it air-gapped at the Pentagon. That's how secure our software is. Now, of
That's
course,
powerful.
most clients want access to the internet too, which is fine. But we do have the ability to basically run it in a dark room, not plugged into the internet, which is pretty cool.
So you can have like self-hosted models, which is obviously extremely important for security. And basically, you can have specific models that are allowed access to internet for some like very specific niche work cases, and this is a permission-based system, right? So not everybody has
Exactly.
access to, and this is a deterministic, which means I log in, and the system knows what I have access to, and it gives me the access to the things that only I can I am allowed to access, so to speak.
Yeah, it's completely deterministic. Yeah, and look, there's pivoting to agents. There are all kinds of super cool agents out there now, and I'm sure you've talked about a lot of them on the show. In fact, I know you have. But one of the agents that's kind of cool that we built is an agent building agent, right? So you can basically say, hey, I want an agent that does X. What should the prompt be for that agent? What's the meta prompt for that? What should it link into? Things like that. So that's super, super cool and kind of, like the wave of the future. You're not going to sit there for an hour and figure out, hey, how do I build this agent? It's basically going to build itself, which is kind of cool.
That's interesting. And where do you see agents going in cybersecurity? So I know there are now building agents that do like your security scans, doing security audits. So it's agents auditing code written by other agents. Where do you see this going?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great idea to kind of separate the two. Like, here's an agent that does something. Here's another agent that checks it. I think right now that's pretty valuable because you could even do the build and the check with different models,
Yeah.
right? You could build with OpenAI and check with Llama 3 or whatever, right? So I do think that's valuable. Where I see that going is uh, autonomous agent. So most agents right now, you're kicking off. A human is kicking off, or it's part of a timed job or something like that. But that's not always going to be the case. At some point in the future, we'll have agents that are just out there, kind of like people. Like they show up at work, they do stuff, and then they stop, right? Although I think initially they're going to be, as you mentioned, Philippe, they're going to be very focused on one thing. I've got a great example for you in the security space, which is checking your server logs. Like, who
Mm.
has time to look at 100,000 pages of server logs that are generated over a week? Like, no one in the world, no human in the world has time to do that. And you may even get some alerts from those, but you're probably getting 100 alerts or 1,000. There's no human in the world that's going to go check 1,000 alerts in a week. You can use an AI agent to do, or two different agents to do really important things there. One is go through the server logs and figure out, hey, give me the 3 or 4 things that are super important that happened or haven't happened before, right?
Mm.
Pretty easy, right? The other thing you can do is have AI agents prioritize, hey, I got 1,000 alerts. Like, which ones do I, the human cybersecurity professional, need to actually go look at, right? And it could help identify which ones you need to go look at, or which ones are new and haven't happened before. And even though they might not be critical, you want to take a quick look at it and see if something's going on. So I think those types of tools are going to be extremely valuable in cybersecurity space. But I have to say, I still think that Gen AI and AI have enabled the bad guys so far more than the good guys, unfortunately.
Yeah, I feel the same because now it's like super easy to write exploits, and like these people were not like we always have hackers who kind of write to us and say, "Hey, we found a vulnerability, pay us money." But now this has increased 10 times because all these people who couldn't code or do anything, now they have access to these tools that do it for them, so they can write these exploits much faster. Yes,
Yeah. Yeah, and it's impossible to keep up with the patching schedule, right? You know, a software patch used to take 30 days 20 years ago to implement. Now it's 14 or 15 days. The exploits happen on day one, right? So you've got almost 2 weeks where known vulnerabilities are not patched. And I think that's something that AI agents could help with as well, because each time you see something out there that is an unpatched vulnerability, you could create an agent to go check around and see if anybody's exploiting it on your system, right? So there's all kinds of uses um, for AI agents in terms of cybersecurity. But I think there are kind of two phases right now to AI agents. You know, one is the efficiency phase, right? Like I use AI agents for my email and calendar now, right? I can say things like, write an email to Philippe and tell him what times I'm free for a meeting tomorrow. It will put that in my draft folder in Outlook. I can go check it and click send. Now, we're not at the point where we want to allow AI just to blast out emails to people. Like, who knows what's in there, right? But I'd say 95% of the time it works great. Another five, I'm like, hey, that's the wrong day, or I didn't mean that Philippe. I meant the other Philippe, right? Like
Right.
things like that, right? So there are issues, or it just gets the email address wrong or something like that. But 95% of the time it works super well. And it's meeting transcripts and, hey, generate this and generate that and generate something for social media. That works super well. But we're now getting beyond that to like, hey, where's the real ROI on this? Like, how can I save myself? How can I improve my process as opposed to just make it more efficient, right? And we're starting to see that in call centers. So, for example, we've got a bank that's a client that has a call center, and here's the case study. Super interesting. So they're like, look, we're going to create like a frequently asked questions agent for our call center. Maybe the experienced people don't need it, but the new people definitely do. So use it for training, use it for answering questions live when customers call on the phone. So they did that, and they got a 30% productivity enhancement
Oh,
at their call center, just shorter calls, right? Because they can get the answers right away, all those good things. So that's a great result. But there was an even better result in that they took all the transcripts from all these calls and said, what are our customers most confused about? Or what are they calling about? And then they took those top three things and put them in the front of their customer service page on their website. So now customers would go to the website, say, there's the answer to my question. I don't even need to call customer service. And they cut the number of customer service calls by 50%, right? So kind of thinking about tools like that you can use AI agents for to improve your process. And that's just one example. And I think we're going to see more and more of that over time.
well, yeah, especially now that people are building these agentic frameworks and everybody's focused on like multiple agents, so it's not just a single agent orchestration like customer support. I think that was one of the first most obvious use cases, and people were showing great results. Now they're saying, well, we're going to cut our software engineering by 50%, and all the code is going to be AI generated. So, what are the risks of AI generated code that's just going out faster to production day in and day out?
Yeah, well, look, I think about data poisoning, right? So we
Right.
normally think about data poisoning in terms of, okay, I'm taking a data set from the internet, I'm going to use it for X, Y, Z, and I don't know what that might be. That might be, uh, I'll make it up, a bunch of emails for CEOs you want for your marketing campaign or something like that. Now, if you're going to ingest those into AI and say write a more personalized letter to the email to the CEO, you're taking the risk that someone has poisoned that data set, and that
Mm.
instead of ingesting someone's name, you're ingesting a prompt injection,
Hmm.
right? And oops, the letters you're writing are now corrupted, right? Or
Mm.
also embed some kind of Gen AI attack. So the same is true with code, right? Look, if I'm writing a code snippet, I'm going to read it over and go, yeah, that looks fine. If I'm having AI write 100 pages of code, is the human to go through all that code and say, is there anything in there that looks suspicious? That might be, linking to a nefarious website somewhere, or creating a backdoor to my code or whatever. Like, most humans are not going to do that. So that's basically the equivalent of data poisoning. It's code poisoning. And that's something I think we have to be very wary of. But again, guess what? You can create an agent that checks for code poisoning, right? Like, it's not going to be perfect, but that's kind of the first step in terms of, hey, is it creating a backdoor? Hey, is it linking to, a website that it shouldn't in Russia or something like that, right? So I think that's going to be pretty important going forward. And no one's really doing it that much yet. We're in the top of the first inning for AI agents. And I think that first we're going to see a lot of innovation. Next, we're going to see a lot of consolidation, meaning, hey, here's the great use cases. We've kind of figured it out. And then we're going to see, unfortunately, a lot of cybersecurity issues around it as you discover that, oops, like everybody at my company has access to this AI agent, or someone else has access to it, or the AI agent has access to data that it shouldn't, and that's created a problem. And look, if you're at a random manufacturing company in the Midwest, that's a problem. If you're a giant healthcare company or one of the world's 20 largest banks, that is more than a problem for you. That is a problem for the world, which is why I think AI agent security is so important, and we're just one of a handful of companies doing that right now.
Yeah, I think it's such an important thing. I think about this daily, right? Because we are producing a lot of AI code, and some of it goes through review, some of it doesn't fully go through review, and it's just the scale has changed. So you need a lot more people to review what is being produced, and you need agents, but you don't trust agents because there is AI phobia, right? People are afraid of AI in the sense that they're afraid of what AI may do wrong, because for every 10 things it does right, it may do one thing wrong, and that one thing can lead to a data leak or some sort of a exploit being found in your code. And then how do you, like, who is ultimately responsible? Is it you or is it the model? And with these
Yeah,
certifications, that's going to resolve this ambiguity, because it's going to be you who is responsible for checking every
right.
piece of code that this AI writes. Yeah.
Totally agree. In the end, it's the human is responsible still, right? Yeah, I totally agree with that.
So, I know you used to work in JP Morgan, and they've spent a lot of time building out their own kind of AI and AI tooling. Maybe we can talk about
Yeah,
that a
sure.
bit.
It was actually Morgan Stanley.
Morgan.
But yeah, they used to be the same company a really long time ago. But yeah, so they've done a really good job on the wealth management side, right? They
Mm.
partnered with OpenAI early. They set up a fair amount of, we've been speaking to them about governance, risk management, compliance, and cybersecurity. And that appears to be going, pretty well. I think they're not as focused on AI agents and more focused on, traditional Gen AI, although I'm sure they're thinking about AI agents and experimenting. Um, it sounds to me like the propagation of that to the rest of the firm perhaps didn't go as well as planned, right? Because one of the issues when you build AI for one team and it works great is it may not work that well for another team. And it was exactly what I was talking about before, where, hey, let's create some cool agents for customer service. The CFO would look at that and go, I can't use this. What am I going to do with this? Like, I don't care about my customer call logs, right? I care about the books and records of the firm. So I think they're discovering, and a lot of companies are discovering that, when you do a pilot for AI, you need someone from every part of the firm there. You can't just have like one team there to build out AI and build out your 20 agents, and all of a sudden no one else cares about those. So that's an interesting interesting finding there, and I'm sure like it's very fixable, obviously. Um, I think that one of the biggest issues around agents is going to be, as you point out, in the security and compliance area, right? So if you have an agent. It's in healthcare. There are a lot of requirements there, right? Like, I'll give you a good example. A good example is that HIPAA in the United States governs how you deal with personal health information, right, or protected health information. The law says all data must be encrypted in motion and at rest. Like, most AI does not do that right now. There's a graph database sitting out there with your PHI on it. Like, that doesn't work. You're literally violating HIPAA with the law. Now, what we have right now in beta is HIPAA compliant Gen AI. Everything's encrypted in motion at rest. Even if someone on a prompt line types in a customer's customer protected health information, let's say their account number or something like that, right? Like, it gets encrypted before it goes to the AI, right? Like, nobody else is doing that right now. It's very difficult to do, but necessary according to the law. And this is why a lot of regulated industries like healthcare are kind of taking it slow in AI, even though we know that there are going to be tremendous benefits to them over time.
Yeah, and I think in many cases, how do you avoid, especially in healthcare, things like hallucinations or bias or other things? I mean, I can ask ChatGPT to give me a diagnosis for something, and it will do a decent job. I mean, it's not an MD, but it will answer something that's sensible. And I've seen people say that ChatGPT was able to diagnose their illness while the doctor wasn't. But then the question is, what happens when it diagnoses it wrong? And
Yeah, no, that's a really big deal. Look, we've discovered on our side that the best way to prevent hallucinations is to narrow the scope of an agent,
Mm,
right? So if you have the dream that many companies have is, Philippe, I want to create a super agent that does everything for everybody at my company and has access to all our data, and we're going to sprinkle some magic fairy dust on it and it's going to work, right? That does not work, right? Number one, it may end up looking at the wrong data. Number two, it's going to be very expensive because it's searching around all this data to find your answer. What you want to do is narrow the scope of your agent. So, for example, if I'm a financial analyst, I might have an agent that all it does is look at earnings call transcripts and give me answers, right? So I can say, hey, get NVIDIA's last earnings call transcript, summarize it for me, and give me their top 3 risks. That's going to work because it's going to very specific data for specific things and giving me a specific answer. And the probability of hallucination there is extremely low. I'll give you an example. That's our philosophy about how we do research augmented generation, retrieval augmented generation, and we haven't had complaints from our customers about hallucinations at all in the last year. So that's look, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to work extremely well compared with, like, hey, let's just look everywhere. One of the other issues is, what data are you using? So think back to a couple years ago. Yeah, the very famous story about the lawyer who said, "Oh, like, write me a brief," and it got all the fake cases that ChatGPT just, like, made up. Why did it do that? It did it because it didn't have access to case law.
mm,
It had no information. There's no database. There's nothing out there on the internet about that. It's all protected information. Once you give it access to case law, whether that's on LexisNexis or some other tool, the answers get much better. So it really needs to be a purpose-built agent, as opposed to just some general agent like ChatGPT. Along the medical lines you were talking about, there's a company named Atropos Health, run by Brigham Hyde. He actually came on my podcast a while ago. It's one of the top episodes on my podcast, AI Risk Reward. And he has a company that what they do is do customized research for doctors for specific patients. So you come in, you've got symptoms, the doctor can't quite figure it out. He basically goes to the Atropos Health tool and say, hey, Philippe's here. Here's what's going on. Here's what I think is happening. And basically within 5 minutes, it goes and searches all the literature, finds the appropriate research articles, summarizes them for the doctor. The doctor looks at it and goes, this looks good. And then you can also hand it to the patient. 5 minutes later, the patient hasn't even left your office yet. And you've got customized research about their situation. So super, super cool. But the point is that only works because it's got access to all the data, right? You can't just go to ChatGPT and say, hey, do some research for me on my potential situation, because it just doesn't have access to those documents.
Yeah, that's really impactful, especially being able to pull out the diagnosis. And I can assume that in the legal setting there are a multitude of applications in that as well. Um, so to kind of wrap this up, I want to kind of get maybe the people an understanding of how they can get started with like AI risk, and basically, get started and get onboarded, because this
Yeah.
is something that may be interesting for me as well. So we do a lot of like different enterprise implementations, and security comes up every time, and you have to explain to people that yeah, there is, you explain it to people, but people want something more tangible. So having something
Yeah.
like that as a partner and coming into this larger deals that like are with the governments that want security, want regulation as much as possible, having a partner like that would be really interesting to people who are doing enterprise. So maybe you can
Yeah,
kind of walk us
absolutely.
through.
Well, look, our website is AIC for
Mhm,
corporate
mhm,
risk.com. We also deal a lot with compliance. So, for example, I've submitted a white paper to the Office of the Control of the Currency in the US about how to regulate AI. And I presented to groups of regulators about, presentations, keynote speaker about how to regulate AI. And for better or worse, I do have a background in risk and compliance, so I've thought a lot about that. And honestly, the key there is it's got to be, principles based. But you do have to think about it, especially if you're a bank or in healthcare. We do have a free version of our software
mhm.
available on our website, so go check it out. Obviously, it's not going to do everything that you need as a large company, but it gives you a flavor of what to do. And what I'd say is look, the most important thing, Philippe, that we talked about is honestly the private cloud deployment part, right? If you're going to the internet and using the public version of ChatGPT and you're putting customer or privileged or confidential information in there, it's not your information anymore, right? It is the property of OpenAI, and you just screwed yourself, right? So you've got to do these private cloud deployments. But once you do that, then you got to hook into your own data. You got to be able to hook into your email and your calendar and your data and your documents and no code link to APIs like your customer relationship management system. Because if you don't do that, you're not getting the full value of agents and the full value of large language models. And that's what we do turnkey in an hour for our clients.
So really, it's about, and just so I understand this a bit more, like for me, because I do have use cases that I like for our company to kind of bring this on, and for some of our bigger clients. So this can help basically provide a security layer for my models that I am deploying with these clients. And if I, for example, want to use Claude or I want to use OpenAI, you have the tools that I need to basically encrypt the data that goes from like in transit and in rest, and gives me access to the same models but secure.
Correct. Yeah. And you can use all the models at the same time. So what a lot of companies do is they assign different agents based on the different models based on the use case. So you've got a very complex problem, maybe you assign, O3 to that, right?
Hmm.
If you've got a relatively simple thing, maybe you're using, Llama 3 Mini, right? Because you just don't need to burn all those tokens, basically. And yeah, so it's pretty cool. I mean, there are some constraints around it. So, for example, you can only deploy Azure OpenAI on an Azure account, right? So you do
Yeah.
have to be aware there are some limitations. But the true open source models like Llama,
Yeah.
you can put them on AWS Bedrock, you can put it on Azure, you can put it pretty much anywhere you want, including on prem, right? Which is pretty cool. But that is key for corporate security, is having the models and your data and our software inside your firewall. Like that's the
Yeah.
key. to
That's the
start.
key. And what does the cost for that look like? So
Yeah, so for us, it's it's anywhere from $80 a person, a license a month, all the way down to $17 a person a month, depending on how big the company is. So it's
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 affordable.
very cost effective. Yeah,
Yeah, this sounds like very reasonable.
yeah,
And then you have security on your models, which is
hmm
extremely important. I get
yeah,
this question for the past year. Every day I am talking about security on models
yeah.
with different customers.
Yeah, and it's great because it's all turnkey. This is not a consulting project. This is not a 6-month thing to do. This is your set up and ready to go in a day. We have an ARM script that runs in 14 minutes. It deploys the models, our software, the compliance database. And then we spend some time linking into Teams and Outlook and your data and your documents and no code access to your external third-party APIs like your CRM or whatever, or Box document storage, and you're good to go.
That's amazing. And I think anybody who is listening to this, I think that's what you need for your secure LLM integration into your project or into
Awesome.
your company. Perfect. Well, thank you, Alec. It was a pleasure speaking to you. I think this was very insightful, especially for our listeners. It's a very impactful and it's a very hot topic, and a lot of people are thinking about this now. So having somebody like you on the show is really, really valuable to us.
Well, thanks, Philippe. It's been a great conversation and love being on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alec. Have a good one.